Hello, hello, and good morning. Welcome back for another episode of Sit Down, Stand Up, the podcast where we try to tell not unfunny stories. And I don't know how much we're hitting that bar, but we're going to keep trying. And by we, I mean me, and I'm joined by my muddy mug of marketing. I'll do most of the talking and just use this as a prop, more or less. But it's functional. You know what kind of struck me is, I don't know. I wouldn't say terrifying. Way too much hyperbole today. This is not terrifying. It's not disturbing. It's not unsettling. I think it's just sad. And it's the idea. I've been alive for 45 years, almost 46 years, actually, coming up on the 46-year mark. Good gravy, which really sucks. I mean, granted, after day one of being 45, you are technically closer to being 50 than you are to 40. Which is, it's always a bummer anytime you enter a new decade and you're now getting closer to the next number. I mean, until you're 30. Because 20, you want to get to 20. You really want to get to, I remember desperately wanting to get to 20 because I wanted to get to 21, 22. I mean, you don't really get all of your rights technically until 25 when you can actually rent a car legally, which is such a weird bar to cross, that to be the threshold. That's the final right that you get, or the final privilege, however you want to think of it. But when you're younger, you just want to get older because it's unlocking more of your abilities. It's kind of like if you're playing an RPG and you're just like, you see the skill tree and you're like, I want to be able to do my ultimate move. And well, by the time you're 30, you've got your ultimate move, whatever it is. Technically you have it. So, maybe you haven't figured it out what it is yet. In my case, I think I've got a bunch of non-ultimate moves. They're just a bunch of moves spread out. So I've got many, many different skill trees, and none of them culminate with an ultimate move, unfortunately. But that's different people, different strokes, different folks, as they say. Why was I going off on that a little bit? I remember what I wanted to talk about. I'm just wondering how I got here exactly. It's been rough. Obviously, I'm shaking the rust off. I missed yesterday. I meant to do it. I wanted to do it, but I got to a point where I wasn't ready to actually do anything until like 9 or 9:30. And then I had some other stuff I had to get done, or other things I decided to prioritize. I should say that. Take responsibility. And by the time I was ready to go, it's like 11 o'clock. And I was like, I could put on the robe. But at this point, it's a little disingenuous. It's not exactly a morning podcast. And not that that's the identity at all, but I am wearing a robe, and I think it would be silly to put this on, like take off whatever shirt I'm wearing and put on the robe. The whole idea is you put on the robe, you grab your cup of steaming hot, room temperature water, and you talk for a little bit, not stop in the middle of your day and pretend you just woke up. So, granted, if it ever happens, I will let you know. I will tell you. Not that it matters, but I'll tell you. This is not the genuine article. This is actually 1 o'clock in the afternoon, not 1 o'clock in the morning. But no, this is one of those mornings where I woke up or was awoken. There's no, I don't know why, but like 1:30. So sometimes you can tell that you're up in the middle of the night. Sometimes you really can't. That's what this was. I woke up and I thought, okay, you know what? This is how I usually feel at 5:30. I get a good night's rest, but I still feel kind of meh. But I looked at the clock. It was 1:30, which is good, meaning, hey, I've got 4 more hours to sleep. But it's also bad because usually when that happens, as was the case last night, I couldn't go back to bed immediately. I had to get up. I had to do something, and I try to minimize what I was going to do, but I can't do anything functional. I couldn't do something like this. Actually, you know what? Maybe I should. Next time that happens, that's what I'm going to do. Because I guarantee what I got to do is essentially trick my brain into thinking that I've been up for a while. And then it goes, okay, you can go back to sleep now. Or, okay, I'm ready to go back to sleep now. I guess it's a personal thing. And then I can lay back down and go to sleep for another 4 or 5 hours. And going back to sleep is not the hard part. It is a hard part, but it's not the worst part. It's that when there's such a gap, when it's like 1:30 to 3:30 effectively is how long I was up. When I do fall back asleep, when I wake up, if I do get my 3 or 4 hours, 1, I haven't had a full night's rest. I've had it broken up. And 2, now I'm starting the day really, really late. So we kick this thing off at like 7:30 in the morning, which is not where I want to be. But anyway, that's more narrative and not really storytelling. So, but this isn't much of a story either, but to begin with, yes, I was talking about being old or feeling older. You level up by the time you're like 30. And yeah, so we'll get back to that point. You level up till you're about 30. Hopefully you find your ultimate move, the skill set, the skill you've been leading up to and developing. But then after 30, I would say, you stop. Well, I stop celebrating birthdays, and not like I avoid them or I'm like, oh, birthdays. It's just, whereas before they were like progressing towards something, you stop getting that idea that you're progressing towards something. Even if you look at death as just a part of life, or even if you think there is an afterlife, it still could be a bit of a somber thing to think, I'm moving towards the end of whatever of this existence. Obviously that's a little premature at my age, but it's just one of those things. You just feel like you're on the wrong side of your growth, especially if you don't have much to show for it. I actually just talked to a friend of mine, was thrilled to hear from him. He grabbed me on Facebook. I got on Facebook again. I'd been off of it for years. Account was gone and everything, but I got back on it because I was doing some communication through work or for work as the brief month that I was trying to do sales again. Well, shouldn't say trying to do sales. I was giving it a shot, even though I knew darn well it wasn't going to work. That might sound like I had a bad attitude. I had a great attitude. That's why I tried it at all. I was like, hey, let's see if I can make something work. But I know me, and I'm not a sales guy. Anyway, there was one person who wanted to communicate, or several people wanted to communicate through Facebook dialogue. Ironically enough, or oddly enough, after the initial communication was made, they stopped talking to me. So I don't know. Anyway, bottom line is I now have a Facebook account, and there were some people who just, like, I didn't announce my presence. It was like, hey, I'm back, because it wasn't supposed to be. I didn't want to get back into the cesspool that I found Facebook. There's a lot of friends. Let me just say, there's a lot of friends from my youth who I connected with, who I kind of wish I had just left with fond memories of in my childhood. When you start getting on your feed, again, a word I loathe entirely, when you get something on your feed that tells you, it sees them posting about some political thing, or, I mean, granted, we've had a poop storm of a decade, really. The 2020s are not going to be remembered fondly by many. There are silver linings. There are great things that have happened. There are things that have developed, but there's been a lot of things that face planted, and a lot of folks, I feel, who, just would have been better off not knowing how they dealt with the 2020s, to be honest. But such is life, and you move on. All of that to say, I had a friend get on there, my childhood friend, one of my oldest friends, actually, a really cool young man named, well, we were young at the time, Ben. Was one of the only other kids in the block who had a stay-at-home mom, like I did. Roughly shared the same faith, although that wasn't really a part of our friendship. We were kind of too young at that point. I mean, basically, if you have any kind of faith at all, it comes down to, does God exist? I remember that being the barometer. You didn't ask if somebody was a Christian. You didn't ask if they were Jewish. You didn't ask if they were, Hindu or anything. You just asked if they believed in God. That was it. And that was the extent of it. Do you believe in God? Okay, cool. Yeah, I believe in God too. We didn't believe anything about God. It was just, you believe that God exists. And so anyway, I mean, we had, I guess, that little bit. And our moms were really good friends. I think that's how we became good friends. And actually, he had a younger sister. I have a younger sister. They were good friends. So it all just kind of worked out. I don't think our dads connected, but that's because my dad didn't really mingle with a lot of people in general. So yeah, he wasn't not friends. And his dad, my friend Ben's dad, was in the Army. So he was gone a lot of the time, actually, come to think of it. Anywho, bottom line is we reconnected, and he's like, and he followed in his father's footsteps. He went in the military. I think he was an MP, and so yeah, he's retired now. 8 kids, I believe it's 8 kids. Yeah, just doing stuff, and I think he's going to go into like the prison system, be like kind of like a guard or manager, kind of in prison stuff. Anyway, not to read all my friends' mail out there, but just it was really cool to hear from him again, to hear how successful he is, and my point is, we're the same age, and he has a wife, 8 kids, one career finished, successfully retired from one career and is now starting another one. I, on the other hand, am drinking from a mighty Viking mug sitting in front of a bunch of Call of Duty fake beverages. I mean, I don't want to rag on myself, but, not married, no kids, no, nothing meaningful, really. And despite having worked virtually every day of my life, or certainly every, there hasn't been a time like where I'm just like, I'm not going to work at all. Like that's never been part of my life. There's been no career. There's nothing. So this is not a wham me. I'm just saying it's just, he's what you were going for. When you turned 30 and you unlocked your hidden potential and all that kind of stuff, and you're moving towards something, when you're getting close to 50, you want to have something like that. You want to have a life like that you've built. But if it hasn't worked out, because that's the thing, like I've never been necessarily, I've never yearned to have kids, but I do know that the girl the gal, we'll call her a gal because she wasn't a girl really, but the gal who I very much had affection for, if she said I want to have kids, I'm like, okay, let's have kids, because it is a natural imperative, it's a natural desire, and it was like, yeah, and I don't want, I'm not going to be a guy who's like, okay, well, what you want and what's actually probably very good to do, well, no, not probably, it is very good to do, I'm going to say no because it's not my jam. Because I adapt. My tagline is adept to adapt. It's catchy, it's pithy. It's pithy, and it is that is my thing. I will adapt to whatever situation I need to adapt to, and that doesn't mean I tolerate it or I just roll my eyes and go that. It means I take it on, and especially when it's somebody that you love and it's a desire of their heart, it's kind of a joy to bring that into being. And then you have a little your part of you is in that child, and yeah, anyway, all of that to say, it's never been a priority. It's not been something I've craved, which I think has held me in good stead, because to this day I have not met someone with whom I like. There have been many awesome people, awesome gals that I've known who I would just as a general rule been like, yes, it would have been great to have had this love and have a relationship, but it didn't click on my end, and vice versa. There were plenty of gals who I liked who had zero interest, didn't even want to try a date or anything, which I don't hold against them because I know what it's like to be on the other side of that. But my point being, regardless of whether I wanted desperately or moderately or at all children, there's never been a ripe opportunity, because there's never been the person who I would want to be the mother of my children and who also wanted me to be the father of their children. You have to have both. It has to work both ways. And so it just hasn't coalesced. So I can't feel too bad. I don't really have any regrets about that. It's not like I had something amazing and then I passed it over because I didn't want to have kids or, anything like that. It's never been a thing. And I've seen far too many relationships that seem to have been built on a great deal of attraction, physical attraction, a desire to have kids, which when you pair them together, that is, let us procreate or do the act of procreation because I love you. And I'm not saying that's wrong. There's anything wrong with that inherently. It just, you realize a lot of them, once they, the kids are out of the house or even before then, that maybe there's not a lot of simpatico there. That really they were unified in the desire to have kids, which I think is a natural imperative. It's something that does naturally drive people together so that they have kids and so that there is reproduction and so that the world does not just become a barren wasteland. But that does mean that perhaps there isn't a whole lot of overlap in terms of what you want to do with your life, who you end up becoming, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, this is all pontificating. This is not stories. But what I was going to start with, let's back up, is I don't know if I'm the only one. I can't believe that I am, because if I am, this is terrifying. Well, no, it's not terrifying. I said that it's not. That's hyperbole. Goodness gracious! See, I'm out of practice. Maybe I need to do one of these on the weekend just to keep the. Actually, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I know it's a day thing. Some days you wake up and your mind just is like, oh yeah, it's very keen, very, very focused. And then some days you wake up and your mind's all over the place, which is very fitting for what I'm trying to be saying, what I've tried to say for the past 15 minutes, which is, Even though I've been alive for 45 years, I think I have, if you were to put all the memories that I can conjure. Now, granted, some of them have not been called upon for a very long time. So if somebody said, oh, hey, do you remember when you were this age and this thing happening? Yeah, okay, I remember this and this and this. So there's probably some memories floating around in there that I don't even know that I have because I have not called upon them out of necessity. And there are some memories that I think are just kind of, they're not worthless, but they don't amount to anything. They're almost like snapshots. You know how like on, I don't know if it happens on regular phones, but or like an Android phone, but like an iPhone, sometimes when you take a picture, it's like a moving picture. It'll show you moving into the pose. Like here's the picture, but it actually shows you going there. It's a weird thing. I don't know, but it's like that where it's like literally 60 frames of motion of this one scenario. Like I remember the inside of a car with the leather seats. It was like one of those old like 1970s metal boats essentially, and it was broken down. This leather was cracked and it had like a split in it. I think I might be embellishing and I don't even know it because my memory, I'm accessing it, but then it's like, okay, this is what I don't know. It's very bizarre. But the bottom line is, to my knowledge, I don't think that I have more than, if you were to just play them, if you were to join all my memories together into like a movie, an MP4, I don't even think it's 2 hours long. Out of 45 years, I think I have like 2 hours of memories. And again, that's playing them back to back. But you think about it, that means 2 hours of my life total that I remember. Because it's not like, okay, I remember a birthday or I remember a Christmas, but I don't remember the entire day. I remember opening the presents, or I remember the smell of the wrapping paper. I remember the tree. I remember the train. But that's an amalgam. That could be an amalgamation of several different Christmases. Actually, that one memory that I'm remembering Christmas, maybe like it's one of those things. If I smell something, I'm like, ooh, that triggers a memory. It reminds me of something, a certain time in my life. If you were to show me wrapping paper, I could probably tell you. Well, I could tell you if it was part of my childhood Christmases or not, but I probably couldn't tell you which one. I can tell you I remember there were certain Christmases that I got certain things. I remember going out. There was a laser tag Christmas where I don't know if you know laser tag. I believe it's Lazer because that's how you spelled stuff in the 80s. Laser tag in the 80s. I got that. There was a helmet, which I loved helmets. I mentioned that before. I like hats, helmets, cool things like that. It's a really cool looking helmet. I think they did a good idea with the design. So it had the helmet. There was a hat that didn't look as nice, but it was another piece of headwear. Then you had an actual vest. So the basic laser gun set had it's really cool black laser tag. I don't know what they called it because I don't think they called it a gun, but the tagger, the zapper, maybe that was what it was called. The zapper, you had a target, and then you had like call it a harness. It was basically a very, very flimsy thing that you could put over your chest. You attached the target to on your chest, and it had a belt that would hold the harness on, and you could hang your holster for your zapper from your belt. That was the kit. That was the starter kit that I wouldn't say a lot of kids, but many kids had. I remember Bruce Baumgartner. I don't know, Bruce, if you're out there. Bruce Baumgartner brought his laser tag set in for show and tell. I think it was second grade. I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was second grade. Bruce brought that in, blew all our minds. He showed us how it worked. That was my first time ever seeing laser tag. And then we went to visit my cousins in Leesburg, I believe it was. And they were always doing like crazy stuff or whatever. They had laser tag. And so they were playing. I remember going out there, and I didn't have any laser tag at the time, but I thought it was so cool, and I watched them play it, and they let me play a little bit. And so eventually I asked for laser tag. And so there was a Christmas where they just gave me laser tag. Stuff that I'd never seen before. So hat, helmet, there was actually like a real vest. It actually had padding and everything, which, but it wasn't, not thick padding, not like, hey, I'm going to play football padding, but it was a much more robust vest. And it was like a silvery gray color instead of just this kind of black strappy thing. But a much fuller vest made you really feel that you were laser tagging. And I got that. I got two sets. See, my parents are very forward thinking. They realized, well, if we just get him a laser tag set, just one zapper and one target, who's he going to play with? Like, it would rely on other kids having it as well. And most of the time, that's not how things worked. When you're growing up, unless we're talking like a Nintendo, which was even a little bit later on in my childhood, where almost everybody has one. So if you have a game, you can just bring it over. A lot of times, if you got something really cool, it was very rare that any other kid in the neighborhood or a lot of kids would have that as well. So my parents knew this, and so they bought me 2 sets of the Zapper and the Target so that I would at least be able to play with one other person. They also bought me the Starbase, which allowed me to play by myself. The Starbase, I don't know how it worked, but it was this little base thing. It wasn't very big, but it would shoot at you. Like, you try to shoot it and it would shoot at you. Now, I don't know how it knew where you were. I don't know how much of a fighting chance I actually had against it. I feel like I did beat it several times, but it also could find me no matter where I was in the room. So I'm guessing it just, because it had like a little dome that it looked like the kind of the top of the face of the target, because that's what you're supposed to shoot. But, and there were settings on it. You could adjust the settings and whatever. Anyway, I don't know how much of a fighting chance I had, how smart it was. It couldn't have been that brilliant in terms of just being programmed to do whatever. I don't know how, but it would tag you. It would definitely tag you no matter where you were hiding, unless you covered it up, which was illegal. You would usually find you. And I don't know if it responded to where your light came from. The mysteries, but I had a Starbase. And then I would say the creme de la creme were these rifles. They were white, and they were way bigger than this. I mean, you can't see my hands. They were so big. Well, probably not. They were probably about this big. But anyway, whereas the laser tag zappers were only the pistols type size things. Those were black. These were white, so they were different. And they had rapid fire. Pew, 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 pew. Just hold the trigger down and go. They were automatic. You know, this was semi-automatic. These things were automatic. They were beefy and they looked cool. Laser tag looked cool. I stand by that. The coolest non-firearm firearms to ever be constructed. I remember that Christmas. And so I got all that in one Christmas. It wasn't trickled out. I didn't get some things here and there. I got that. Because I'd asked for, because me and my friend used to play Army. We used to pretend, Ben, the guy with the Army dad, we used to pretend like we were, playing Army. We'd just go out in the woods and just pretend we were, fighting a war. Of course, the childhood version where, know the horrors of it. You're just the innate pew, pew, pew type deal. So it was a bright yellow with a brown stock and brown kind of hand thing where I don't know guns all that well, but you hold it in the front here. And it was one of those ones where you pull the trigger and there was no mechanism necessarily. It wasn't like battery powered, but it would go. So it kind of sounded like a weapon, but it's better than going. So, it kind of saved you from that, but you could pull the trigger and that would happen. That's kind of what I was using up to that point. Now, I don't think it was bright yellow at that point because it was a safety thing, because they didn't have the little orange tip that they started putting at the end of guns to be like, hey, it's totally fake. But for whatever reason, it was. So I had been using that, but I upgraded then to the laser tag, which was to the detriment. Those guns, they survived for a couple years as well. I don't know how long it was before they no longer were functioning as the laser tag things, because that was the thing with that kind of firepower. Two black pistols, the 2 white guns. I was the unarmed dealer effectively for our little play group, and so I would bring those. I had a big old. My dad gave me his. It was like this big, thick canvas. I think it was canvas. Not a duffel bag. It was like the bag that they issued to you that you put all your stuff in when you went out to sea. The big, it kind of looks like a body bag, but it's only, or a punching bag, I guess. But it's not that big. Anyway, I don't know what it's called. I'll have to look it up. But it's like a military issue thing, and I think all branches use the same one. But my dad gave me his, so it was this big burlappy sack type thing, and I packed all the guns in there. Would take them down to Greendale Road or Court, whatever it was, where we would always congregate and we'd play in the woods back there. Anyway, but I'd also asked for like camouflage, because which it doesn't ever resonate or click in your mind. I'm carrying a bright yellow gun or a bright white rifle and I'm wearing camo. What's the Why? Like, okay, well, your firepower is not conducive to your camouflage. But I asked for it anyway, and I got a really cool sweatshirt. It was camouflage. And then I got effectively what were camo PJs. They were very, very thin. They were legit camouflage, which was good because there's some camouflage that I didn't like. Some camouflage didn't look right to me. It was too light or too whatever. This was legit camouflage, but it was very, very thin, and it had the little bands on the arms, that remind you of like pajamas, and same thing with the legs. So I didn't use them as much because it really felt like I was running around. Even when I put my laser tag vest on, it still kind of felt like I was running around in my PJs, and that was a little embarrassing. And it was cold. I mean, I got those for Christmas, so if it didn't keep me warm, I couldn't really wear it. So yeah, that was a little bit of a downside, but the laser tag was amazing. And I remember going out when I got it and running around in the woods. We call them woods, but it was just like a tree line more or less behind our house between us and the next, like where the single family homes began. It had a little green electric box outside the fence, and then just kind of woods, and that went down to another set of woods. Anyway, it was a nice little area, so I'd play back there a little bit. There was nobody to play with really. I'm running outside. It's Christmas morning. I remember the sun was coming up, and it was bitterly cold. It wasn't snowing, but it was definitely chilly. I was wearing my camouflage PJs, and I was quite cold. I think I changed into them. I think I changed out of them a little bit later. But I just remember going outside and running around a little bit with my helmet, keep my head warm and just shooting my guns and what have you. But nobody else came outside, so there's nobody to play with. So I went back inside, and I don't know what happened after that. Like, that's my entire memory. I described to you my entire memory of that Christmas. I don't remember if it was, because we'd alternate. Sometimes we have Christmas in the living room, and we'd have the tree, and we had this kind of big bay window. More or less, it was essentially the width of maybe 3 or 4 regular size windows. And it's just like one big. And I don't remember anything. I don't remember how it opened, because I know it opened. I don't know if it was actually 4 windows back to back to back or side by side by side, because it wasn't a big, just solid pane of glass. It was somehow it was a window. I don't remember how it opened or anything. I just remember we had that there, and a lot of times we put the tree there. And I love that because that meant that anytime we came home, especially it's wintertime, so it'd usually be dark if we went out, ran errands, went grocery shopping, did anything. As long as that tree was plugged in, we plugged the tree in at some point. You came back and you got to see, the warm glow of the tree. And we did the multicolored lights. I don't know how people do just plain white lights. That's fine. It's a garnish if you want to wrap that around your banister. But on a Christmas tree, it needs to be multicolored lights. It defeats the point otherwise. You can have both. I think it looks a little tacky. But anyway, we had the multicolored lights. So you pull up into the parking space, and you could look, and there's the tree with all the lights going, and maybe you could see some lights behind it. And it was nice. But then we'd also do it in the basement. And I don't know what determined where we did it, but the basement was really cool too, because it was right next to the fireplace. There was like a little corner we'd put it in, and it was literally like right next to the fireplace. But not in such a way that like, oh, it's going to catch fire. It was just right next to it. And then we had the TV down there. And so it was very, very nice and cozy. So you had to go a little further to get to the Christmas. But when you did, there was more there. You had the television, you had the fire, a nice crackling fire. It was very picturesque in many ways. And yeah, we'd switch but I don't even remember if that laser tag Christmas was down in the basement or if it was upstairs. There are some Christmases where I do distinctly remember where they took place, but that one I don't even remember. So yeah, 45 years of life. And I don't remember. I can stitch together maybe 2 hours. Maybe that's even overshooting it, because it took me to describe that memory a lot longer, obviously, than it takes to replay it in my head. And I mean, that's it from that Christmas. That's all I remember. And maybe even that year. I don't even remember what happened that year. I don't remember what year of school I was in. The only thing I know for a fact is that when we went to visit my cousins, I brought my laser tag guns, and guess what? They were over laser tag. They were playing paintball. So, and that would be a trend. Anytime. Now, I never bought a paintball. Oh, no. I think they were doing skateboarding. So, anytime I went to visit them, and it was only like once every 2 or 3 years, they would have something really cool. And I'd be like, oh, I want to do that. And so I'd start doing it. And then when I came back to visit, they would no longer be doing that thing. They would be doing something else. So I think it was skateboarding after that. And then I got a Joe Cool skateboard with Snoopy on the bottom. And we went back to visit, and then they were doing paintball. I never got a paintball gun, but even if I had, I would have came back with a paintball gun. They were doing rock climbing, and they put a bunch of like handholds on the side of their house. Anyway, it's just it's not scary. It's not terrifying. It's not even depressing. It's just kind of like, wow, that's kind of a bummer. Like a life lived, 45 years. I don't have any memory loss as far as I know, and yet I can only remember fleeting glimpses of this life that I've lived to this point. So yeah, remember things if you can. Take pictures, I guess. But yeah, I don't know how to end this gracefully, so I'm just going to let it face plant. There's the end of the discussion. I will talk to you later.